Okay, good evening. So today I want to talk about a Russian folktale um, that I was really into as a kid that I'm kind of returning to today and thinking of all the little elements that I can relate to a bigger picture or metaphor about adult life that I didn't realize I was witnessing when I was watching it as a kid. And so this particular iteration of it is a really beautifully and comically done animated cartoon narrated by none other than Robin Williams. So it has so many hysterical voices and moments in it. It's a little bit of a masterpiece. And um, so this story of the Fool and the Flying Ship, I it's got that fairy tale aspect of the merry band of characters. You know, this group of strange, unlikely characters that somehow come together to accomplish a goal they could not have done on their own. Which also reminds me of The Musicians of Bremen, which is one of my favorites as well, which I narrated on my channel. I'll put a link to that here in the tag. Um, but what we see also in this story, The Fool and the Flying Ship, and it is a common trope, that we see over and over again in many children's fairy tales. We see the benefits, the life benefits, and sometimes instant benefits gained from the traits of generosity, curiosity, willingness to help others, and bravery. So, yes. And what's also interesting and funny about this is it comes right out and tells you the archetype you're dealing with in the story, right? So, an archetype is something, a character that brings out something that's in the collective unconscious. And it tends to be a character that everyone can very strongly relate to. So we see these archetypes pop up over and over again in stories, movies. They're very relatable. Now, Jung has a list of 12 of them, which, yeah, it is very fascinating. We can get deep into that, but one of them actually flat out is the Fool. And the Fool is the aspect of a person that exists to keep the ego in check. And the interesting thing about the Fool is we see the laughing fool, right? But what's lurking underneath that is malevolence. And that archetype is the same reason why some people are afraid of clowns. It's this primal knowledge that exists in the human organizing of personalities and society that recognizes that this smiling, never-endingly smiling face of the joking around fool is hiding and ready to strike. It's got this. So it's very interesting to me. Now, so let me just have a look at my notes here. I wrote down everything that I kind of wanted to say. And I should have said this earlier, but go ahead and watch this cartoon. I'm going to link that below if you want. It's about 30 minutes long. You can kind of watch it, see what stands out to you, anything you notice, anything that brings something up for you that you'd like to discuss. And go ahead and leave it in the comments. I would like to make commentaries like this and start a discussion. So yeah, it can be just like a funny thing, a historical thing, something that reminds you of something from your childhood, anything. I find that if we pay attention, there's always something, some kind of jewel in these stories other than what's clearly obvious on the surface. So, okay. What did I write here? Yeah. So, and what we have here, okay, so the Tsar announces that if anyone can build him a flying ship, they can marry his daughter. So we have this fool. He's in a family. He has 2 other brothers who are, they seem to be idiots, but they've got the golden child ring to them. So they announce that they're going to go build the flying ship and win the hand of the princess. And when they do this, their parents gift them all of these wonderful things to prepare them for their journey. Delicious foods, cheeses, wines, and they dress them in their best clothes that they have and send them off into the world. And then there's the joke that the brothers were never seen again for all their intelligence. And the fool is like, I'm going to go too. And the parents, what do? They cut him down. And what I think was really, that one thing that stood out to me was the mother tells him, oh, you're going to get eaten by a pack of wolves. Right, so she's like threatening him about what he's going to encounter out in the world. And while she's saying this, the artist has turned her hair into a wolf's mouth, a wolf's face. And this kind of makes me think about how our parents, for many people, I thought it was just people like me, but no, our parents, for many people, become our greatest handicap, our greatest bullies. And so while we're being warned about the wolves outside the walls, the most dangerous wolves are the ones that are inside our own home. For a lot of people, right? Because having children brings up the shadow. It brings up all of your shortcomings, right? You see in your child the things you hate in yourself that you can't acknowledge, and it just drives you crazy. Most people cannot handle it. This generation we're coming out of are people who severely damage their children, and we're all kind of dealing with the fallout of that. So and then it kind of reminds me, this fool, he got the same kind of start in life that I did, which is like, an insult, a kick in the ass, and you're out on the street. Enjoy life. So, I think that there's all these little elements of the story. There's got to be some kind of, little elements that we can all kind of relate to, and that's one for me. There's some people who got the corn brandy and the potato latkes and the fine silks, and then there's people like me who just got kicked on their ass. So what happens? The fool goes out. He has no idea what he's doing or where he's going. He comes across this little old man, strange little old man. And so they decide to sit down, and the old man's like, hey, I'm hungry. Can you offer me anything? And what does the fool shows? Humility, generosity, and kindness. And he just says, I don't have enough to offer somebody. This is kind of embarrassing, the meal that I have, but I'm happy to share it with you if you're hungry. So he goes to pull out his food, and what do you know? It's the corn brandy, it's the potato latkes, it's the borscht, it's the caviar from fish that have only swum in champagne their whole lives, okay? So he's got this beautiful spread, and this made me think about how, as entrepreneurs, when you share what you have, despite your insecurity about it, it becomes something much more than it was when you kept it hidden away in shame and fear. So I say, bring out what you have to put on the table, what you have to contribute, and watch it become a feast. Even if it just creates a connection with somebody, or sparks someone else to remember something, or have courage, or something that fulfills, that awakens their dharma in them. You never know. And so I love this. I love these stories of unexpected abundance because that's kind of also been how my life has gone. So I love that. So him and the old man feast, he falls asleep. And when he wakes up, he's got the flying ship. And I love this because it's kind of like the feast where he was sharing his gifts and they became more. Suddenly, he realizes he has this great treasure. Okay, which can happen to some people. Like that kind of happened to me. I realized I have a gift. I have a gift for telling stories, for no other word than just being interesting. Okay? Being interesting, inspiring people. So you might wake up and realize, oh my God, I've got this huge flying ship now. I shared my gifts. Now I've got this massive flying ship. But is that all he needs? No, he needs to get the ship to the Tsar to win the hand of the princess. He doesn't know how to fly the ship. He doesn't know how to do anything. So yeah, that's kind of like the journey we take as entrepreneurs as well. We wake up to this amazing ship and we're like, okay, now what? And so the merry band of misfits that he picks up along the way could be seen as the inherent, the latent traits that we have. Now, I personally believe that we're not aware of our wings until we get kicked out of the nest. And because we're adults, we don't have a parent to kick us out of the nest. We got to take the jump. We got to leap off the cliff and find that at the bottom, it's a feather bed, like Terence McKenna once said. You got to take the leap, and life will make the feather bed appear. Obviously, I'm not talking literally, people. Right? That was like when I moved to Mexico. Good Lord. I would describe that as burning the boats, man. Because I'm like, this phrase, burning the boats, it comes from a Tony Robbins story about how this crew got shipwrecked on a beach, and they were really, really far out, and the men were getting really despondent, and they were just obsessed with getting this boat that had crashed back together so they could leave. And it finally got to the point where the captain was like, we need to survive on this island, and we need to commit to doing that because it's more like realistic. And to show that we are fully committed to taking over this island, we're going to burn these boats so there is no other way out. We have to do it, right? And that was kind of like what it was like when I came to Mexico. Like, I came here, I did not have a plan B. I did not even have a plan A. And here I am 2 years later. How the hell it's unbelievable to me. So, he's got the ship, and now he's meeting all these strange characters who seem to have a bunch of like glaring handicaps. Okay? They've got handicaps. But when their time comes, when they're in the right situation, the handicaps turn out to be superpowers. And so I absolutely love that because it can be, the journey that we find within ourselves as we uncover new strengths that we never knew we had. Or it can be, a metaphor for what can happen when groups of people come together successfully. And you can take down the behemoth that you maybe couldn't face on your own. And maybe you look at this ragtag group of rough, simple peasants with these weird handicaps, and you're like, what the heck is this? But then their powers start awakening, and they have their moment to shine when all otherwise seems lost. So I love stories like this because I'm weird, and I've had a number of situations like this. I've met a number of people who are like this as well. I think that there's a lot of autism in my generation. I know I'm on the spectrum. I got tested when I was a kid, and yeah, they're like, your daughter's got a different kind of brain. So she's like slow and weird in some ways, but she's also a genius in other ways. And we want to study her, and she doesn't have to go to school anymore. And I was like, yay. So I feel like it could also be seen as the journey of millennials right now, the lost generation. Oh, God. Right? Our parents had homes and careers and children and, a lot of things at the age of 30, the age of 40. But here we are, we're this ragtag group that doesn't really know where we're going. And we've got these weird skills in this landscape, and we're not quite sure where they fit yet. I was thinking, I've been thinking recently, I really like stable normie gigs to have in the background while I do my creative work, because I don't have backup plan of family or anything like that, and I really value having this stable source of income that I can just work easily at, something that is not subjective. I love that. It's like, this work is done or it's not done. It's correct or it's not correct. It's not like, oh, is this video going to perform? Right? It's like not subjective, like the quality of a thumbnail or the choosing of a title. These things, I always want to work with numbers, math, science. So I find that very comforting. So anyway, let's see what I've got here. Oh, and this, I also really love too, one aspect of this story is that when they're assigned the tasks, the fool is completely delusional. So when they arrive at the Tsar's palace, they're like, oh no, they didn't actually think anyone was going to do it, and they didn't want to marry the princess off, so they decide to come up with 3 impossible tasks in order to try to thwart these peasants from winning the hand of the princess. And every time the fool hears one of their crazy requests, he's so delusional, he's so dumb that he doesn't have the skill to think about how he can't do it. And because of this, it gets done. And I think there's so much we can learn from that. People can think themselves into failure very easily. I remember when I was in Calgary, I went to this writers' meetup, and I had joined the meetup group ahead of time. And I went and sat down, and there was a guy across from me, and before the meeting began, he's like, hey, I'm just going to tell you something. I saw you were coming. I looked you up. I see you've had a lot of success with ebooks. I just wanted to know, how much did you spend on your ad campaign? What publisher did you go with? Because asking me all these kind of questions. And I was like, I didn't have an ad campaign. I shot my first viral video on a Samsung Android cell phone. I edited everything myself. I paid $50 for the design of my ebook cover. And I paid about $80 for my website domain. And he's like, yeah, but who published it and who marketed it and who's your PR? And I'm like, I do all of these things. And he's like, oh, so he was, and then he asked some kind of question he's like, well, how are you going to make money? I'm like, I am making money. I've already made a lot of money. And he's like, it's not possible. And it was like he was being faced with cognitive dissonance in that moment, because he had this belief that it's not possible. And I was literal, living, breathing proof in front of him saying, oh yeah, it is. And it was very strange. It was very useful for me to witness this. His face was just very confused. He didn't think I was lying. He didn't think he was wrong. It was kind of like if you walked out the door one day and the sky was fluorescent green and the sun was actually the moon. You just what? It just doesn't register in your brain. When I first started that, venture, I was delusional. I was delusional. I saw that, some YouTubers had done it before me, and I thought, oh, I can do that, and it'll be easy. And it was. I had many people coming to me after, like, online. Oh, girl, you're an entrepreneur. You totally understand. Like, we just work. People think they get away from their job and they become an entrepreneur and they work way more hours. Like, you worked really hard to get where you are. And I was like, no, I didn't. Tell people, people, they want to come in with this grinding hustle mentality and these things they feel the need to say and these beliefs they've built themselves up that, like, they're at the beginning of a marathon that's going to take them out. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm quote unquote lazy because of years of severe trauma and also like working my ass off like a single mom since I was 4 years old. So I've already put the time in. I'm older now. I'm tired. I have, genetic problems. My mother was the last of 10 kids. My father was a literal child of slaves. Like, my genes are good for some things, but being in a human body is not one of them. So it's kind of starting to break down a little bit here and there. So yeah, I'm tired. I've had 2 strokes before. I think people can tell the difference in my content now versus 10 years ago before the strokes. So, I mean, I'm running on fumes, which is quite funny to me sometimes. But anyway, so yeah, being delusional, being the fool. Where in your life could you be more of a fool? Where could you reduce your ego, not take yourself so seriously? Where in your life could you stand to add a little bit of chaos? Where could you stand to add a little bit of ruckus, trouble? I find that when we shake our lives up in this way, you never know what will be teased out. So it's always kind of fun. Anyways, this was wonderful. Thank you for participating. Please leave a like, comment below, and check out some of my other videos. I like to talk about random stuff like this that I just love. I'm going to be doing some more of these, and I will put them into a playlist, which will be linked at the end here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.